Let's go over how to do the Balancing Chemical Equations lab. First, open the link to the lab, and you'll see the worksheet looks pretty small. So I'm going to go over here. This is the magnifying glass, and I'm going to choose to make this larger so I can read it better. Start with your background information. I'm going to let you do this part on your own. Watch the screencast, Diagramming Chemical Equations Part 1. You can write some notes in the space below. Then, you can view one of the reactions that was demonstrated in the screencast with this link. It opens up to a YouTube video about this chemical reaction. After you watch the video, write down in this space what signs of a chemical reaction you observed. Now let's start with the directions. In the space below, you'll see a chemical reaction that's not balanced yet. You're going to move the molecules, the atoms around to form the molecules, just like Mrs. Clymer did in the screencast. Then continue to add molecule diagrams until you have a balanced number of atoms in the reactants and products. Add the correct coefficients before each molecular formula in the reactants and the products of the chemical equation. We'll do the first one together. The reaction of potassium and chlorine. You can click the link and actually watch the chemicals reacting to see what it looks like. Now we're going to start diagramming. First, we have to diagram potassium, chlorine gas, Cl2, and potassium chloride, KCl. The subscript in Cl2 tells us that we need 2 atoms of chlorine. The lack of subscripts here and here means that we have 1 each of each of these atoms. So I'm going to take a potassium and model the potassium like that. So you can see potassium is 1 single potassium atom in this equation. Chlorine, we need 2 atoms of chlorine because the subscript 2 tells us that there are 2 atoms in a chlorine molecule. They are chemically bonded together, so I'm going to put them so they're attached to each other. This is a covalent bond. We learned about covalent bonds in our last lab. Now the arrow means equals, so I can go ahead and write an equal sign there so that I remember that what goes on this side of the equation has to match this side of the equation when I'm done. Now, KCl stands for potassium chloride. It has 1 potassium and 1 chlorine. So that will be our potassium chloride molecule. At this point, I have 1 of each. 1 potassium, 1 chlorine, and 1 potassium chloride. Now don't get confused. You might think, why did I put a 1 here when there are 2 chlorines? Well, there are 2 chlorine atoms, but 1 chlorine molecule. The coefficient tells us how many molecules. Now this is not balanced because I have potassium balanced, but not the chlorine. I have 2 chlorines here, 2 chlorine atoms, but only 1 chlorine atom here. You can see that I have 1 potassium and 1 potassium, but my chlorine doesn't match. So I need to add more chlorine on this side to make it balance. It would be nice if I could just do that, but I can't because it doesn't say that I have a Cl, it says I have a KCl. So if I'm going to add anything, it has to be a KCl, potassium chloride. That gives us 2 chlorine on this side and 2 chlorine on this side. But only 1 potassium on this side and 2 potassium on this side. Also, this coefficient is now a 2, isn't it? Because I have 2 molecules of potassium chloride. Well, we still have to fix this up. These are not equal sides. So I'm going to add a potassium on this side. Now I am going to add just a single potassium because that's what formula I have. When I do that, I have to change this coefficient because now I have 2 potassium. And I think now we've fixed it. So let's just double check our work. I have 2 potassium atoms and 2 potassium atoms on this side. So that works out. And I have 2 chlorine atoms on this side and 2 chlorine atoms on this side. So that works out. Everything is balanced. My coefficients are 2, 1, and 2. The next reaction is sodium chloride with fluorine to make sodium fluoride and chlorine gas. Review how we did the first one and then see if you can do this one. You can go back and watch Mrs. Clymer's screencast again if that helps too. Good luck, and we'll be going over the answers soon.